You're listening to the Nature's Image Farm podcast. I'm your host, Greg Burns, and we're talking bees, homesteading, and the old-time ways. This episode is brought to you by ENDURAHIVE wax-dipped equipment. No paint, no rot, no hassle. ENDURAHIVE. Built to endure. Now, on to the show. Well, good evening, everyone. Welcome back to another Stream Team Beekeeping Chat. It's been so long since I've been able to jump on. I almost forget how to hit the big red button there. Tonight, joined with Brian Koper of Castle Hives and Bruce Jenne from Bruce's Bees. If he can get freed up out of the bee yard, he'll join us as well tonight. But man, it's so good to be on tonight, Brian. It seems like this is the time of the year where it's just, I mean, it is sun up to sundown and everything in between.
It is full go.
You could say it has been full go for sure.
Yeah.
But I want to thank everyone for joining us tonight for another Stream Team Beekeeping Chat. Tonight, we're talking about successful splits and answering your questions, and hopefully have some answers. Or if not, we'll have more questions and questions. We'll just have to see how the night goes. But it's a wild time of year. It seems like it wasn't that long ago, Brian, and we were just kind of just sitting here listening to Bruce talk about spring beekeeping and just dreaming of what it would be like. And then next thing you know, all of a sudden, here we are, and we are smack dab right in the middle of it. And things are starting to kind of crank up and get going. So Miss Grammy Midwife, yes, that is me. I know there has been some fantastic shoo-ins in the meantime. Shout out to Mr. Mike Berry and Mr. Tom Sosman for being able to fill in the third chair. Really do appreciate that. It's been wild, Brian. It's been the last month. This is probably, if you really think about how wild the season gets. Yeah. You get into mid-March until the end of April, it is just full-on package bee season, and we are just traveling up and down the coast, literally hauling bees, delivering them to folks, and it has been it's actually been a really good season this year, and that has just kept us really busy. We've got just one last package pickup available. We're now, I can't even believe it, Brian, we're in the third delivery route of the year already. And from there, we'll migrate into our overwintered NUCS and then spring NUCS. And then it just tapers off. Via Honeybee's Castle. Who? This guy. Can you believe him?
Once you get silky, then you start talking trash like that.
Silky smooth Tom Sosman. The sauce man himself, huh?
Soft man. Yep.
But yeah, it's been wild, Brian. Here in East Central Ohio, here's Mike Berry. Splits? Are y'all talking about splits? We got those 30 days behind us already down this way. Wow. Yeah, no doubt. This is the here's the fun part. Here's all of the secret splitting techniques that maybe you wish you would have known 30 days ago, or maybe you're glad you're already past it. And you don't care. You're already past it. You're already moved on. Your bees are already doing what you're doing. But it's been absolutely goofy here. This spring has been it's been great weather, but it did not start off like I hoped it would. And I know I'd be curious, folks tuning in tonight, leave us a comment here. Has spring been normal or abnormal? And can you even tell? Miss Marianne Series did splits today. Yeah, it's right now. Let's just give a little update on kind of what things are looking like in our neck of the woods, Brian, and we'll kind of go from there. Right here in my neck of the woods, we currently have the red buds are in bloom. They're on their way out the door. The pears those are already over. Our apple trees here at the farm are in bloom. Especially our cultivar apples, those are in bloom, and that's pretty exciting. That's a whole story for a different day, but that's pretty neat. We've got the autumn olive is full on right now, and also the dogwoods, and so it's like everything all at once, kind of all the white blooms just kind of boom popped up. And if it continues down this path, we're going to get going to blackberry in a big way. And boy, that could really be nice. We've said it for many years, but when we have red buds and apple bloom, you can do no wrong, and it seems, and that is the time to kind of split and get things going and really get serious about grafting. And sure, you can try to tempt the weather and graft sooner to see what happens. But what I have found, it never really pays to get too far ahead of the weather on grafting. And we'll talk a little bit about that tonight and why. So I know this is the time of year where everyone wants to take a selfie with their grafting bars, and that's great. But they're, I think, for good reason. Don't get super excited to get out there and try to make it all happen too early. And if you do, you'll see it immediately in your cell starters. But anyways, that's where we're at with our blooms. The bloom report, I guess we'll call it. The most recent bloom is dogwood. And I think from here, we'll go into some of the ground games, the henbits, the violets, the dandelions are on right now. Moving forward, we'll be looking forward to blackberry and, Lord willing, black locust. So that's where we're at right now. We'll talk about what happened and why it set everything back here in a minute. But Brian, give us a bloom report for Northeast Ohio.
I tell you, I always listen to what you say down in your area, and we're always a week or two behind because the dogwoods they haven't started yet. Like our red buds are out, our dandelions are polluted now. They're all over the place. The forsythias haven't quite hit peak even yet. It's so weird. I'm serious.
What?
My mom, in the front of my mom's place, she has a huge forsythia, and it hasn't completely like popped yet. Like, I'm looking at things up here and I'm just like, would you just start already? But like we were leaning towards the direction where everything was going to pop any day. And then we had that, it was 2 weeks ago when we had that cold spell. So we had like 3 days where we were like around 40 degrees. And then at nighttime, we were like upper 20s. So it kind of just put everything on a pause. Now we've been warm and everything is popping like crazy. The bees are just all over though. I was out, I've mowed our yard twice. On a higher setting, I'll say that so that Tara don't hear me. That way I don't hit all the dandelions in that. But I saw a couple, and they've got to be from a feral colony around, a couple on some dandelions. But yeah, we're always like 2 weeks behind you. So I'm thinking, though, that we're going to end up with just a massive flow here this spring, just because everything is kind of setting up that way. With the rain that we have had, the sun, the temps that we have had, I'm thinking that if you are not staying ahead of things this spring, you are going to be in a world of hurting. You're going to be chasing them is all you're going to do. So, but the report up here, yeah, it's just weird.
Yeah. That's wild.
Ohio, though.
So what's the most recent bloom is what? Are you saying it's dandelion and forsythia?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
That is absolutely.
Our dandelions popped in the last, I'd say, 6 or so days. They went from where I would look out in the yard and I saw like 30 of them, to which really in the grand scheme is nothing, to now there's probably 300 of them in the yard. So that's been in the last, like, just say a week. So,
You know, I wonder, I think that might be, that's going to set you up to be in better shape than us because if we look at the nighttime lows coming up, you and I are probably going to be similar. And it
yeah,
looks like once we get past Sunday night, Monday night, from
yep,
Tuesday on, it looks like things are going to be like on a
perfect.
path where maybe we don't have much frost at all to worry about. And that really kind of set some things back. But
Mhm,
it's neat to see, you know, how things are kind of moving in different pockets and when is it go time? When is it time to pause? When is it time to just not get quite so
mhm,
excited? But it is definitely time if you have mated queens where you can make some splits. But to
mhm,
full on be grafting and splitting, the timing can just be a little bit tricky there. But you know, it is what it is. A special shout out to Dan, the CO there at Noble Correctional. Wow, one of the great honors that I've had here in the last this spring specifically is to go out and visit with the fellows there at the Noble Correctional Facility, and got to spend some time with them. Kind of tune in to their beekeeping successes over the winter time, what they're excited about, what's working, what seems to be working better than other things. But to be able to spend some time in fellowship with those guys for me is absolutely an honor. Don Kroc and I from the Noble and the Guernsey Club visited with them and just got to spend some time. And man, just what there's really is a great group of guys in there, and I love their heart and their passion for beekeeping and their outlook on life. We can all learn a lot from. So a very special shout out to CO Dan and then the guys there. One of the cool things we got to do is kind of just help facilitate and them making a split a couple weeks ago, or maybe it's been a week ago,
yeah,
week and a half, and got to kind of show and demonstrate the use of a double screen board and what a very incredible piece of equipment that can be, especially when you've got some cold weather kind of creeping in. And so we'll talk about a little bit more tonight on the use of those and some other splitting techniques. So again, shout out to Dan and the guys there and Noble County. You guys are awesome. Keep up the good work and keep being that lighthouse. So it's interesting, Brian, when we look at one of the double-edged swords I think with social media is you will have folks that they'll post something and you'll look at it and then all of a sudden as humans you almost immediately start to compare yourself or your journey with somebody else's. And if you're not careful, you will start putting yourself in this mental loop, this mental cycle that can never be satiated. But you're looking at somebody with a full graft, a full frame of takes. Now you don't know if they just grafted 3 or 4 frames of those and they put all the winners together, and maybe they
mhm,
didn't. But you also don't know what part of the country that they're in, if
yeah,
they're in a flow and what their pollen situation is. So you see something like that and you get real excited and you say, man, you kind of get down on yourself and you're like, what am I doing? Am I late? Am I behind? Am I on time? What do I do? Da, da, da. And you start getting
mhm,
yourself worked up because you feel like you're behind. As beekeepers, I think we're always feeling like we're behind. Um, but understanding the nuance, the context, the biome, the environment that folks are operating is really important. And I think if you start to rush things, you will start to see a very certain result
mhm.
that will not be the picture perfect. I took this picture for the Instagram kind of a deal. But Brian, have you ever felt like you've pushed a little bit too early because you thought maybe you should, or you thought you heard somebody else was splitting, or you thought you heard there were swarms coming, and you maybe pushed to make a split or to make queens prematurely, and then had an outcome that wasn't as great as you liked?
My no, in in my earlier years, with the lack of experience, my timing was lousy.
Mm,
I would always go over after things were already well on their way. I would find either capped cells that were ready to emerge, or I remember checking on, I remember going over to do inspections one time, and there were virgins that were emerging as I was pulling frames and look at them. they were crawling out then. And I'm like, oh man, you know, so I've always been one in the past where I never had the timing down and I was always chasing my tail.
Mm.
Now through the years, I've learned to watch more or less like those developmental signs in a colony, and I'll just say to myself, okay, I'm somewhat predicting, you know, and I'll look at the weather too, and I'm like, all right, I'll predict on this day here, or like in a week or two, I should go over and do splits.
Yeah.
And like I saw there was down, I think close to you, somebody had in one of the groups, they said a first, you know, their first swarm hit. And I'm like, you know, that's about right, because we're usually a week or two behind you up here. And my last inspection that I did, it would have been on Monday. I set everything up to do splits, whether they were horizontal or vertical splits. And from what I saw then, I said a week or two is all I have. So, and I've got everything set up that way so that it's all prepped and ready.
Mm.
I don't want to enter into this 2026 chasing my tail. But yeah, in the past, I've done it completely backwards. It's just you go over and you don't see the queen, you see a virgin running around, and you're like, oh man.
Whoops. Yeah.
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 So yeah.
You know, that's you know, learning the rhythm of the season is like super important, not just
Mm,
by the calendar, but what you're actually seeing out in the field. What is blooming? How
mm,
fast something is moving along? How quick something comes? A different plant comes into bloom, or all these little trigger things that you think about. For us here, ordinarily, I would be absolutely petrified right now if I had not been top to bottom, split out, humbled all my colonies, um, because of the length of time that we've had the warm weather. But we
mhm,
had a very, very specific instance, something that set our brood back by at least 2 weeks. That did happen. And here in our neck of the woods, the maples never actually bloomed. They had just started to bloom, and this is the first time that I've seen this. And I mean, probably how long have I been paying attention to that? 12 years, 13 years that I've been paying attention. The blooms actually, they just were starting, and then you take your eyes off it for a day or two, and then nothing happens, nothing happens, nothing happens. And then I'm thinking, those blooms were just about ready to turn loose. What is going on? And you go out and look and you say, well, you start second guessing yourself and you're thinking, well, aren't the blooms normally like a crimson color? Why are my blooms green this year? And you start to look and realize, oh, those aren't blooms. The maples are leaving out. They bypassed the bloom. You're thinking, what in the world's going on? And then you look at the weather and you
yeah,
realize, oh man, we had those again, some like 20 some degree nights
yeah,
where the blooms they got burnt, they got frosted.
yeah,
I don't think I've ever had it that I've seen it that bad. Well, what that did in the colonies is that maple pollen is such an incredible brood food early on that is the pollen from the maples is what like lifts them off. You know, you can put all the pollen patties in the world you want on a colony, but that is not going to get them to lift off and go
mhm,
into absolute brood mode like the maple starting to bloom. Well, when that didn't
yeah,
happen, the bees are like, they're kind of in this, I don't know, hurry up and wait kind of a mode. We're throwing pollen patties on them. We threw some feed on a little of them because now it's warm, but there's not really much going on out there. And they were kind of in this holding pattern for 2 weeks where it was like you can see them in there. They're trying to brood a little bit, but they're just not doing. They're active, but they're active throughout the colony, but the frame density isn't there. And you're
mm.
thinking, what is going on? Why is everything just so goofy? And then you
Watch,
start to look, and there's just not enough incoming pollen and nectar, and it holds them back 2 weeks. If we would have grafted like
yeah,
when we normally did, like on Easter, the day before or after Easter, that would have been a nightmare for us because
Yeah, you
the
would have been
colonies
hurting.
wouldn't have been set up with enough brood to do what we need to do without risking the brood getting too cold. So
Yeah.
that's the beautiful thing about timing everything based
Oh,
not
yeah.
just on temperature, but on the plants and how the bees are reacting to that.
Yep.
Because if you split them out too soon, you're risking those resources and they're not moving or growing. So finding that space right in between, that happy spot where they are brooding up, there is incoming, everyone's happy, happy, happy. That's kind of where we're at right now. So now we're just getting into full on. Okay, now it's time to start getting the graph scheduled out. Now it's time to start getting everything split and moving forward. But
Yeah.
it goes to show with a little bit of experience and be able to tune in to what is actually happening is so huge for making the right call at the right time.
Oh, yeah.
Speaking of the right call at the right time, Bruce,
Yes,
how's it
sir.
going, Bruce?
It's okay. Good to see you, Greg.
That's a long-time listener, first-time caller. That's what it feels like tonight. But
Yeah, we're glad to have you in here, man.
it's
We
glad
got
to-
a lot
glad-
going on, so it's okay.
It's been a while. I know you guys understand, so appreciate your patience and everyone tuning in. It's when bees is your business, it tends to dictate when and where you are and things like that. And it's hard to get in front of a computer and do these things sometimes. But we were just tonight we're talking about successful splits. I know a lot of you in the South are already past that. You're supering up. You're looking towards flow. But for most folks from about I don't know, central Ohio and north up towards Canada, this is the name of the game right now. So this half of the country are thinking about splits and they're thinking about what is the strategy for the splits and the timing. And we were just talking a little bit, Bruce, about the nuance of the weather and how that plays a big role into when we jump, when we start, and that we can't use the calendar and we can't use the Facebook. Everyone's doing it, so should I be?
What?
You know,
Are you kidding me? I can't trust Facebook?
I'm not sure.
Man.
Bruce, Brian, and I, and everybody up north, it's time for splits. Before we dig any further into that, give us an update, Bruce, on where you're at with your bees.
Oh man, I was just out at Honey Hill Farm, and that's for those who may not be familiar. Those are some bees I manage for a friend of mine, just right here. I've managed them for years over there, and historically, one or two of those hives. There's 6. 1 or 2 of them is just I can't seem to get them all equally strong.
Mm.
This year, I went in there and I added a super on them a couple of weeks ago. They all looked really good. And today I went and I think one of them is requeening, so it's a little weaker, but the others are just gangbusters. Let me see if I can. Ryan, I'm going to send you a video. You can see what one of these things. I'll send it to you on your messenger here. But
Okay.
I was just out there this evening. Last night I went up to Ozark to the farmer's daughter, and Lisa, she's on her Grammy. She invited me up. They have a little bee club up there, and it was a packed house we had. And they asked me to talk about splits. So I heard you mentioning that splits are kind of over for us. Well, they're really not. I mean, April is the perfect time to split here. If you're able, everybody is not able to split early because of queen availability. And when you were here, Greg, it just wasn't time really to start grafting and things like that or making queens. If it was, it's risky in February, even March, it's a little risky. But now it's game on. Everything is just, we're in that beautiful, you walk in the bee yard, the bees are happy. They're just calm. You smell the smells coming in, the pleasant pheromone, in combination with the nectar starting to come in. And today, for the first time, the last day or two, I'm starting to smell that. Down here, when the privet is blooming, it smells like a big flower. Like you walk outside, it smells like a big flower, like a floral shop. And we're starting to get that now. Now I was out at Honey Hill Farm. They've got a bunch of big privet hedges around close to where the bees are, and they are blooming, but there's also a lot of buds that are not blooming yet. And the bees are absolutely just going bonkers. And so I don't know what kind of honey crop we're going to have. We do have good spring honey flows. Sometimes they're mediocre, sometimes not very much at all. But this year, it's just getting started, and they're already, they haven't capped a lot of honey in my hives yet, but they're packing it in some of the stronger colonies. And so it's pretty crazy. Grammy says it smells like cologne. There's a strong, we're just getting there, but in just a few days, it's going to be everywhere, all over this area. You know, you walk outside, it's going to smell that way. Now it's just kind of if you're close to the bushes, but there's going to come a point to where it's everywhere. And so it's exciting. I've got I you know, we did all the splits when you were here, Greg, and those are kind of either in bigger boxes or sold, all those nukes and everything. And from what I've heard, they're doing pretty well, the ones that I sold. And I went a few weeks later and did a round of splits with cells from Tyler Walker down there. And I posted a couple of shorts, a couple of 3 shorts yesterday of how those are doing. And man, they are just doing so good. I actually went through at the 2-week mark, and I felt like it was a pretty good acceptance with some. I didn't see eggs in some of the colonies, but yesterday, this past weekend, which would have been 3 weeks, I went to Appleton Farms and checked on the ones there that I had done. I think we had like maybe 1 or 2 that didn't take out of like, I think there were like 18 or 20. And then I went up here to, I think it was 18. And then up here at Midland City, I checked those last evening after work, and I think they all took. So there were 10 there, I think 10 splits maybe, or maybe 11. Well, one of them I had done a split with a cell because I found queen cells in one of my hives, and that one has a beautiful queen in there. One of them had a blue dot in there, so I accidentally grabbed the queen from the previous colony. And the others were all, I think, takes. A couple of them were just getting started. We're a little over 3 weeks, and I wonder if they just kind of made emergency cells. Doesn't matter. I mean, they're just, I got eggs in every colony. I don't think there was a single one that didn't take, that there's no queen in over here at Midland City. So, I mean, I've got to do something with them. They were literally, I had the 5-frame wooden boxes. I had 3 frames in a feeder. The Pro Nukes I had splits in. I had 4 frames in a feeder, and some of them were so they're sticking wax wherever they can because that flow started, and they are just, it's just so much fun. But the bees are calm. If you saw the shorts I did yesterday, like the bees are literally just like they don't even care I'm there. They're just kind of calmly working on the frames, beautiful brood pattern, and it's just so much fun. Right now, we're just coming into the funnest time of the year to keep bees. This evening I was out at Honey Hill Farm, and my goal, I've got about, I think, 2 or 3 weeks ago, I went out and put like a box or 2 on some of the colonies that were looking strong, just in anticipation of the flow. It hadn't really started yet. And this past weekend I went out and I assessed, and they were starting to bring in a pretty good little bit of nectar. So I stacked some of them up pretty high, and some of them just weren't, some of the ones that weren't ready a couple of weeks previous, they were ready for a super or 2. And then the ones that already had a super 2 on, some of them weren't doing much, but some of them I stacked another super or 2 on top of. And the spring flow is usually pretty good, but we just try to get them to fill them up like they can and extract what we can, and then restack them for the tallow flow, which usually starts about mid-May. And so far it's shaping up to be a good year. Now we've had good rain, but I think we could use a little bit now. It's kind of, I know you guys getting a lot of rain up there, but it's kind of, we're in a little bit of a dry cycle right now. So, but last year I remember we had a couple of dry spells during the honey flow, and it actually seemed the bees just plowed right through it. I think if it rains too much, it can create problems during a honey flow. But anyway, it's fun. Brian, I'm going to try to, so the bottom line is, you can still do splits here. Right now is the ideal time to do it. But if you do splits right now, you may not get a honey crop off of it this year. It's possible still, I guess, if you do really big, strong splits and everything goes perfectly during the flow. You might be, especially if you go single deep management, you might be able to maybe get a little bit of honey. But if you split right now, it might be tough to get a significant honey crop. But you might get enough to, may get a super on some of the colonies you split right now. But I think some of those we split, Greg, and when you were here, I mean, some of those are basically full strength colonies, and they're just, you can't even tell hardly by looking at them the difference between them and the donor colonies. Some of them are so strong, they just blew up completely. And so some of them have double deeps and may have 2 or 3 honey supers on them already. The splits we made on February 20th, which is pretty wild, pretty crazy, but we'll see how they do. I will say, Greg, you were asking me the other day, we were talking on the phone, you were asking, you actually sent me a text, because if you remember when we made the splits, we did 3 types of splits. We did the splits into the Pro Nukes and the nuke boxes, which were, basically, I guess, I don't know what you call those, where you take the split out, you look for the queen, take whatever you take out the brood, look for the queen, but don't see her. Another person looks at the queen, don't see her, put her in the nuke and make splits that way. It went really fast. And then we did 2 different types of queen excluder splits. We did the ones where in Slocum, we did the ones where you set them up and then you take the 10 frame splits, you take the top box off and set it on another empty slot in the bee yard. And once the bees move up through the queen excluder, you move it over, and that's your new colony with the new queen. And then you leave the donor queen in that spot where she was. So you take the new split away. And at Appland, the next day, we did it the opposite, where we took the queen away and dropped the new split down and put the new queen in there. And you would ask which one had a better take. And to be honest, I had probably an 85 to 90, maybe a 90% take. It was a really, really good take on all the queens, but it was a little bit better when we took the split away and left the queen in the original slot than it was when we dropped the split down and all the foragers came back and moved the queen away. But I'll tell you this, those queens that did take in that situation where all those foragers came home, they are absolutely just blowing it up because it's a brand new fresh queen.
Right.
And they're just exploding up. But the cool thing is, even the ones that we did the other way, the new queens are blowing up. They're maybe a little bit behind the ones at Appland where they were successful. But when we left the queen in his donor slot, those queens are doing great too. So that Slocum bee yard is just, I put a picture on social media stories or whatever the other day, and it's just, I've already got like 4 supers on some of those hives. So we'll see how they do.
Well, Bruce, tonight we're talking about successful splits. We should definitely dig into some of the nuance there and maybe go around the horn and talk about, what is your preferred method of making splits? Because what you just mentioned there is so much nuance back and forth that it sometimes isn't just this way or that way. Sometimes it could be, well, mostly this way, unless that way is at this time of year and these things are going on. So let's dig into some of that here. Before we go there, I want to thank Kevin there at Bees in the Abyss for your $10 super chat. Kevin says 267 days.
Until what?
I don't know what that is.
Let's think. I don't know.
Is that the Wisconsin conference or something like that? Maybe
it's.
I'll ask Grok.
Is it a doomsday countdown? Is it what's 267 days?
What is in 267 days? That's January 7th. So that would be Kentucky.
Okay.
Well, okay. Kevin, I'm going to tell you, I probably am not going to be there.
I think Kentucky is probably the last thing on anyone's mind right now. But Kevin, I love that you're thinking ahead and you're thinking about bees. And thanks for your super chat. Really do appreciate that. And then thanks, Castle Hives. Look at this $20 super chat. And I mean, Mr. Grandfather Castle Hives says, who is Greg? Is he new? I'm so confused. Thank you so much for your support, Brian. We really do appreciate that and the continued sarcasm. It's just really ties the room together. Love it.
See.
Okay.
Yes.
Greg, I do say you look pretty good tonight. Are you refreshed a little bit? You don't look quite as tired as you have the last couple of times I've seen you.
Well, I am. I'm going through these spells. I really don't know how to explain it. I'm working on some sleep and some supplements and things. But I have absolutely, in the last probably 3 to 4 weeks, have absolutely hit a wall that I've never hit before. It's hard to explain. We don't have time to get into it, and I'm not looking for sympathy or want to cry about it. But raising a family of 9. Being an entrepreneur, being self-employed, and then living in this world with bees and everything else is just so incredibly challenging. I say it all the time that getting into the bee business for a living was probably the worst financial idea that I've ever had in my life. It's the most rewarding, and it's brought some of the most incredible folks to us. And I'd like to be able to, in the future here, share my testimony on how important the beekeeping part of this piece actually is to a much bigger picture. But that being said, I've pushed myself mentally and physically to, in ways that I haven't before. And it has really shown, not just in even more gray everywhere or lack of hair up here or wrinkles, but just I've hit fatigue, mental fatigue that I've never experienced before. And all I can really, it just kind of feels like your brain is in a cider press and it's just squashed out, and it takes time for it to heal and to kind of recover. And then when your brain is under that kind of stress, your body is too. So the overall exhaustion, fatigue, mental fogginess, things like that, I've experienced that I've never had quite at that level. When you end up working yourself literally all night, all day, and you do that for many days in a row, it takes a really heavy toll on your body, and especially the older you get. And I'm still younger than Brian and Bruce, so I hate to even say, be complaining about age, but I sometimes feel like it's not the age, it's the mileage. Anyways, but thanks for, I'm feeling a lot better, getting a lot more rest. And I'm slowly recovering and rebounding back to regular Greg. But anyways,
glad you're doing better.
But well, let's go around the horn here. I do want to get into some of the methods and techniques of making these splits and what we have found to be absolutely rock solid. Which ones are kind of iffy. Let's talk about, when do we cut our splits off? When do we stop making splits and why? And then let's also talk about, why are we making the splits? What are we trying to achieve? Because I think when we understand what are we trying to achieve with the splits, I think that leads into the conversation on what time of the year, what our expectations are, and then where these splits need to get to as far as size go for a success. There's a whole lot to it. Let's go ahead and get right into it. Brian, historically, what have you found has been your most preferred method for splits? And talk to us about why you are splitting and what your favorite approach is.
Well, the whole reason in splitting is, at least in years past, it was grow numbers. I think that's pretty much the reasoning why anyone will want to split their colonies. It's, I need to have more colonies. That's it. Always in the past, what I would always do as far as my splits, I would always more or less do like an artificial swarm, so to say. I would observe the colonies, look for the signs, and I would try and time it out so that I catch the cells right when they're charged. So they haven't been capped out. You're looking at them, you see that larvae in there and in that just pool of that royal jelly, and you're like, okay, it's time now. What I would always do at that point was move Queen Mama with just a couple frames. I was very conservative with my splits just because I did not want to end up hindering my honey production. I didn't want to knock them back so that, I ended up without that honey crop. So I would do those very conservative, more or less like artificial swarm splits. I learned through the years, like I said, timing is just critical. It's like, my last inspection on Monday when I went over, yep, I saw mature drones now. I saw plenty of drones. Pretty much in every single colony, I saw drones. So I know, and I did see some flying. So I'm like, okay, check that box off. You have to have that. On Monday also, pretty much every colony that I looked at had practice cups. So they're kind of saying, okay, Mother Nature's ramping things up. We've got, the boys are back in town, and now we're just kind of getting things ready. Now, for my colonies that I went through on Monday, this year is going to be entirely different as far as splits for me. Now, I'm going to do 2 of my colonies. I'm going to do my old traditional way. I'm going to do the old artificial swarm more or less, just move Queen Mama over and just grow some numbers. For those two colonies that I split, I'm going to more or less do like a 50-50 split, just because I'm really not looking at those colonies to produce honey. I want to split them into two equal colonies. That way they can grow up. Now, I know the one will be a little lag behind just because they're going to have to go through that process, get a queen, emerged out. She's going to have to mate, start laying. So that one might dip a little behind, but that colony will also have foragers. So as far as, I think if you look at the two, when I do an equal split, that one might have a little dip in population as compared to that artificial that I move. But resource wise, it's probably going to get a boost up just because they'll still have the foragers. That was always my preferred method. Now this year, I have 7 set up for right now that I'm going to demoray, and it'll be all new. The reasoning why I want to do that, and the difference, not to get in the nuances of everything, just the very specifics of the demoray method. The artificial swarms, those type of splits that I would do, think of that as a horizontal. So you have that colony and you move horizontally to another hive. So you create a whole separate hive.
Are you waiting for cap cells, or are you doing this and let them start the whole entire process from the beginning?
No. So when I do that artificial, it's when those cells are charged, but they are not capped. And timing is critical there, because you only have a certain amount of time frame there from where they're going to be capped, and then Queen Mama's probably going to be already on her way if she hasn't swarmed already. So timing is very critical there, and I've learned that through the years. Just look at signs. Also look at the weather, because you can kind of predict there when the weather is going to be nice, and you could pretty much just know that you're going to go on the interwebs and you're going to see everybody posting their swarm pictures.
Yep.
You just kind of know. But 2 of the colonies, I'm going to do the horizontal splits. Now, the other 7, when I do the vertical splits, I won't be splitting any numbers out of those colonies. I will split vertically upwards so that the entire colony stays intact. And basically, it's going to be shifting brood frames away from the queen up above, and that colony will not lose any numbers. Now, yes, it is some work, but I'm only doing it to 7. So I'm not doing it to 100 and whatever like Bruce has. I'm not, I don't have an out yard or a yard like you where I've got 40 that I would have to do this to go and do that to 7 colonies. Not that bad. I already have my colonies on Monday when I went over there. I went through all of them, and whether it was luck, I don't know, or it could have been experience. I was able to locate every single queen, and every one of my colonies now is shifted down to a single brood. Now, in my deep, I had a couple frames of brood, but not a lot. In that medium that I had above it, typically those had 5, 6, some of them had 7 frames of brood up top. So by me shifting the queen down to only 2 and 3 frames down below, she still has plenty of room there to lay up for about a week. And then I'm thinking, in my head, I was thinking next Monday or Tuesday. Now, Tuesday, it's going to be like 68, I think, here. So probably next Tuesday, timing-wise, I'll say, okay, I threw the excluders on, and then I need to look at how much that queen laid up in the box below. Maybe do I give it a couple more days? But it's all going to be timing. And then I'm going to shift those frames up above, and then just throw some more drawn comb down below, and just let her continue to go. When the ones up top emerge out, I'll just shift again. So the colony is just going to expand. I'm hoping that those 7 colonies that I will demoray will produce a bumper crop for me. But that's my plan this year. As far as splitting, I'm going to go through 2 different methods, so to say, the artificial swarms and then the demarray. And the reasoning, artificial swarms, you're growing numbers. The demarray, you're growing honey production. So
Gotcha.
kind of there. And like to show you though, like just to show you where my colonies are at, that's pretty much all of them. They're edge to edge. Now that right there also, that's one of the mediums. So there's bees below, bees on the top. I mean, they're good. And then this next picture here is a little fuzzy just because I took a picture of a video I'm editing, but that right there, I mean, the colonies are packed.
Yeah.
So
Nice.
they're set up in a perfect spot right now. It's a lot of like learning through the years. You have to be able to look at what signs you see in your colonies, what signs you see from Mother Nature, and you have to know how to act, or well, more or less be proactive instead of that reactive. I was just actually texting a nail before I got on here, and
Oh,
he was
nice.
like, he said he's already chasing his tail. He didn't realize that their flow was already on, and he
Mm.
had checked them. And he said he went out and he saw colonies swarms in trees.
Oh no.
He said they're backfilling brood nests. And when I went out on Monday to set my yard up for splits, I've got excluders on everything. I added on a second super onto all the colonies that I'm going to end up splitting just because I figured too, well, they're bringing in some stuff just because I did see some wet nectar in there. I don't know where they're getting it. They got to be getting it from somewhere because I had the buckets turned off just to check some things. And sure enough, I mean, they're building comb and there's a little bit of wet nectar there. So I thought, I'm just going to pull it off. I pull the buckets off and I'm just going to let them go. But everything is set. They've got 2 supers for space. The excluder's on, I think, Tuesday or so, either Tuesday or Friday of next week. I'll be making all of my moves as far as splits.
It's getting to be pretty close, and I think when you look at the timing too, it seems like when the colonies get built up and you watch when you get like 70s and then all of a sudden you get like an 86 or an 88 or a 90-degree day all of a sudden, those are the days that you can nearly always forecast if they're going to be in the trees.
They're going to do it.
But right now it's like today was the day. Like today would have been that day if the maples would have bloomed, and we would have had pollen. The bees would have built up, and today would have very likely been swarm day. So thank God that it.
Yeah,
I'm actually thankful because where everything else has been, it's funny to look back how everything just is lined out in a complete perfect plan that has nothing to do with me. Thank God.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a great point. So Brian, to just summarize, what you're talking about is a demery for honey production, that kind of a split mechanism. And then when you have queen cells in a colony, you're going to take advantage of that tendency to swarm, and you're moving those charged cells and making your splits from there.
Yeah.
And so for what you're doing, then there is zero need for grafting. There is zero need to bring in queens. There's zero need for bring in cap cells, because you're able to make the number of splits that you need to make increase based on what the colonies are producing. Does that sum it up?
Yep. Yeah. Now, I'll throw in this a little teaser. I don't know whether some people know that I got one. I did get a Defender hive with the 21st Bees frames in it. I did on Sunday, I installed a package into a Defender hive.
Nice.
That way I could start to get those frames drawn out.
Yeah.
I put 5 of the regular deep frames on the one side. The divider board that then ran up and down, I left it so that they were open so that they could get back and forth. and I've got 10 of the purple, you know, the smaller mating size frames of those in there that I want my colonies to start to work on now, because my plan after I harvest, I want to be able to replace queens. But if I can get that defender hive set up and running, then I can always drop some cells in that bad boy. And from colonies that I've looked at, and I'm like, okay, behavior, everything is perfect with that. If I end up pushing them to the point where they do build out some cells, then I can do the old cut them buggers out, throw them in there, and start raising up some of my own queens. But I will not graft. I'm not going to get into anything like that. I'm going to let them literally do everything.
Yep.
So in my context, I don't need to do what you do. I don't need to do, like, you know, where Bruce will get 68, you know, queens shipped, or however many it was, 58 or whatever the number was. I don't need that in my scale. If I can just let them do the work and then just utilize a different hive setup to drop cells in and let them finish it out, raise up some queens that way, boom, it's win-win.
What you said there is important. One of my favorite talks to give, I've already given it a few times this year, is queen rearing the easy way. And the premise is, you know, how many queens do you want to make? And if you want to make, you know, up to 30 queens a week, I can show you how to do that without ever even picking up a grafting tool. And it's a very important skill set to have. But I'm not sure exactly what the hitch and the giddy up is, but it seems as though as every beekeeper starts to gain a little bit of success, they look for these little certificates that they can hang on the wall, right? And one of these certificates might be, I grafted and made my own queens, pat myself on the back, and that's now another level of success. And I get it. We want to have achievement. We want to have goals. We want to move forward. But sometimes the actual context of grafting is so misunderstood that actually impedes folks' ability to make the best queens that their bee yard will ever see, are very often queens that they have no part in actually grafting of. And so it's a really important skill set and ability to have. And I will 100% go on record for now and every day of the rest of my beekeeping life saying that, number one, the grass is not greener on the other side with genetics. You have exactly what you need in your yard already. So don't fall for I have to bring in this, I have to bring in that. It's a farce. It's not true at all. Number one. Number two, your bees will create a queen of a caliber and quality that is untouchable by grafting or insemination, hands down, period. I've seen it over and over and over again, and folks who have been beekeeping longer than we can ever dream also know that to be true as well. When it comes into grafting, however, grafting is a tool in the toolbox so that we can say, on this day of the month, we have 30 or 45 or 90 or 100 and some queens all emerging, hatching out in the boxes and ready to go. So grafting is a force multiplier, but it is not a necessary tool for splits. Grafting is not a necessary tool to make your own queens. It's a necessary tool to make sure that you have a large amount of queens all coming out at the same time for consistency and for efficiency. But if you want to make 30 queens or less a week, I can show you exactly how to do that. And it does not include an incubator. It does not include a grafting tool. Those are important things to think about as we continue our talk tonight about making splits. As Brian just mentioned, he's letting the bees do the work, and he's moving those queen cells as he goes around. Before I go on a tear about what I like and how I do it, Bruce has a couple great videos. You can follow Bruce along this year already and how we kind of did that. Bruce, you kind of mentioned earlier making splits into Pro NUCS, making splits with, you have videos now on using a queen excluder. Talk to us, Bruce, based on all of your years' experience. If right now someone came to you and said, Bruce, you have got to write a book, but in this book, you can only write about your favorite, most reliable, most dependable, most fail-proof method of splitting bees, Bruce, what would it be?
Would that be the world's easiest split? The queen excluder split?
It's your book, Bruce. It's your story. You tell us.
If I had to pick my favorite and most fail-proof split, that would probably be it. There are times when I need to use other type of splits, but it is just so easy to make a quality split without having to find the queen or worry about if you got the queen or not, or just, you just make sure the queen's down below, slap the queen excluder on there, and then slap the top box back on there, make sure there's enough brood up there, come back the next day, pull the top box off. I actually kind of prefer to take that top box off and either take it to a different yard or set it there in the same bee yard, realizing that all the foragers are going to go back home. So make sure you got plenty of brood in there and hopefully plenty of nurse bees. And then come back even that same day and put you a queen or a queen cell in there and just rock and roll and move on. That to me is the most fail-proof, easiest way. Very few of those fail, honestly, especially in my experience. They're both very effective if you take the queen away or if you take the split away. They're pretty effective, but I found it seems for some reason that when you take the split away, the queen acceptance might be just a little bit better. I think because all the foragers aren't in there. The foragers can be the ones I think that'll break down that queen cell or kill that new queen more than the nurse bees, and so that would be the reason for that. But this year, Greg, you were there. We did both kinds, and they both ended up with phenomenal success. We introduced mated queens, but I've had really good success with cells in the past as well. That is my favorite type of split. It's and you can also, if you do the 10 frame split that way, if you got a double deep, it's just so easy. You just got to make sure you got plenty of brood above. Might even want to, in the hive that you take away, you might even want to have more brood in the top box. Typically, that's the one I would take away. More often than not, that's what I like to do. Although I will do it both ways. So, but you can, if you want to make nukes, you can do the same thing. You can just pull from it. And I think this is what Glade does. If you Glade Sessions, Utah Bee Man had a video come out a day or two ago. It was recent. It was really a good video where he sets his bees up kind of like that, I think, over an excluder. And then he comes back the next day. He lines up his nuke boxes out there and he just pulls resources wherever he finds in those top boxes. Those bees will move back up. If he needs a frame of food, he takes it. A frame of brood, he takes it, and he just fills up those nuke boxes exactly how he wants them, pulling bees from the different boxes, just whatever he does to fill up those nukes. And then that's how he does his nukes. And it's just so effective to do it that way because you don't have to worry about the queen. You don't have to worry about if she's on a frame. You don't have to worry about finding the queen. She's down below, assuming you shake all the bees off down below. That's one thing you have to do. If you don't see her, you got to shake all those frames off. And but I've got a couple of videos. My most watched video this year, I think it's got about 18,000 views on it, is the one I did where I think I call it the easiest splits. It's queen excluder splits. And and they worked extremely well. That was the day before Greg got there. Then Greg and Mike Berry and those guys, and we had Derek and Paul helped as well the next day, and we did more queen excluder splits. We did some of the full the brood splits, and we did some of those in that one where we did a ton of splits. There's a video on that as well. And then I also did one on the recent splits I did where I put queen cells in there. So I've got 3 pretty decent, I think, split videos this spring. But to answer the question, Greg, the queen excluder split is probably my favorite fail-proof. I've done probably more that way than any other way in my beekeeping career, and I've done all different kinds, but that one seems to work really well for me.
Yeah, it's hard to go wrong with that if you can take the time to. What's nice about that is you're separating the delegation of duty in the colony. And so everything up above that excluder at that point all becomes young bees. And so you've got young bees to do something with. We touched on something there a minute, and I want to just dig into that nuance for just a second, because I think it's really important. When folks are thinking about making splits, I think a lot of folks, like right now, if we said, whatever you do, don't look out your back window because your bees are in the trees. They're swarming. Like sometimes right now, people are so ramped up and worried and anxious and afraid that if you just say the word swarm or the bees are in the trees, a panic almost comes over them. And so they're splitting almost as asset protection. Like they are splitting because if they don't, they're afraid they're going to lose the bees. Right. And so I think that is a reactive way to think, where you're trying to get just ahead of them swarming, but they're only thinking about splitting so they don't swarm. And I think if you spend just a little bit more time in thinking about, well, why am I actually splitting them? Yeah, I don't want them to swarm, but if you put the time and think this through, well, what do you want out of this colony? What do you actually want out of this asset? What is the desired growth or the desired harvest from it? Then I think you can start to pick out which splitting technique is most appropriate for you and what you're doing. Reason I say that is, if you are in the business of making nukes, you might go about making nukes completely different than if you are in this to make honey, or if you're in this to make honey and to keep the bees out of the trees. These are all, they have different management styles for all of those, but you have to understand what it is that you're trying to achieve. I think first and foremost, one of the interesting things, Bruce, that you brought up that I don't think a lot of folks think about, maybe because they haven't had the experience yet, or they have seen it, but we're just now putting all the pieces together. When we talk about making splits, we're literally, for folks who are, if this is your first year and you're just getting into this, if we don't split the bees ourselves, the bees will split themselves. And when that happens, the old queen and maybe half or more of the colony leaves, and they go and they start over, leaving behind the next generation with all of the assets and the infrastructure to keep moving forward. It's a beautiful thing. I've got a sermon in mind that I think would be perfect to kind of better explain that. But for now, knowing that the bees instinctively and intrinsically are going to do that, we have to get involved in that part of the swarming phase before they do it themselves. And to do that, you might say, well, I want to grow my bee yard. I want to make more honey. I want to make some splits to make nukes to sell, to earn some income. And all of those are great reasons to do it. What Bruce had talked about is, until you understand the delegation of duty inside of the colony and the honeybee biology, I think you're doing yourself a disservice, because you're not really sure why you're making splits a certain way. What was fun when I was down with Bruce is we did it 3 ways. And these 3, let's talk about the first one real quick, Bruce, because everything that we did at your place is very similar to what we do here. And so it'll kind of cover what my thoughts are on it. And we'll use your example, because folks can actually go to your videos and actually see what we're talking about hands-on afterwards. Let's first talk about making splits from your colonies and putting them into nuke boxes. You can see in the video what we did is you're going through, you're cracking a lid, you're going through frame by frame, and you're trying to identify the queen. So you're looking for the queen and you don't see her, and you look, you assume that this frame that has cat brood is okay to pull out and to move into another box. So you look at it, you don't see the queen, it goes into, let's say, a pro nuke. And you start building a nuke from the existing colony using maybe 2 frames of food, 2 frames of brood, and an empty drawn out comb to grow on. In Bruce's case, we had a frame feeder in there, Bruce. We had
in the pro nukes, yeah.
In the pro nukes, we had 2 frames of brood, a frame of food, and then one to grow out on. Yeah. And so that was, and we just repeat that pattern over and over and over again, because when 2 frames of cat brood hatch, there's 4 frames of bee coverage. So within 7 to 10 days of that frame's existence into a pro nuke, it's going to double in size, the nuke box itself. So that works out really well. But if you think about that, if you're going into the mother colony right here in a bee yard and you're pulling out material and you're making splits that are going to go into the same bee yard, well, what's going to happen with some of those bees on those frames? If those are older bees or they're field forage bees or field force bees, if you just move them from this part of your yard to this part of the yard, you know, you're going to end up having a loss of population in that pronuke from all those older bees. And so sometimes, like what Bruce and I did, and Derek and everybody else that were helping, we would put extra shakes of bees in the pronuke, knowing we're going to probably lose about a shake or two of bees out of the box. So we add a shake or two into the box. So when it does equalize on its own, when the field force leaves, the box still has a population that can carry everything and move it forward. Or, well, this gets tricky very quickly if you are making splits and you move the brood away. So what we talked about there is we're moving the brood away out of the mother colony into pronukes. And if you leave those pronukes in the same yard, the field force is going to leave the pronukes and go back to the mother colony. Well, you're going to be a little bit lighter in those pronukes, number one. But number two, if all the field force leaves and all you have is young bees in the nuke, even if you have a queen cell or a queen, think about the delay in production on having anything in that colony old enough to actually go gather nectar and pollen. You're going to be upside down for sometimes upwards of 2 weeks. So you have this 2-week period where, yes, the split took, the queen's running around in there, but they're really not bringing anything in to any account. And you're feeding them, you're supplementing, you're trying to keep them moving forward because they don't have bees old enough to fly, to forage, and to bring things back. But if you take that same situation and we're pulling brood out of the mother colony, we're making the split, 2 frames of brood, 2 frames of 1 frame of food, a frame of an empty comb and a frame feeder, or maybe it's 2 brood, 2 food, and an empty if you're not using a feeder. So you're getting 5 frames into a pronuke. If you move those to, however, a new yard, an unrelated yard, then everything sticks. Now that thing is ready to rock and roll, but you do have some older bees in there. And the older bees, the forage bees, are the bees that typically are less accepting of a new queen under a lot of circumstances, except when you have a good flow on. When you have a good flow coming in, that seems to really, really quench the grumpiness of those bees, and also the take rates kind of go up. So in Bruce's scenario, we made those splits, put them into pronukes, and then took them out to a different yard, and those things just, they exploded, as you guys have seen in the videos. They were awesome.
They did great.
Because they are completely balanced in all the delegation of duty. They have everything that they need in there. There's a little bit of a flow coming on, and they just exploded in growth.
Yeah, it's so easy with the pro nukes, and even with regular nukes, it's not too hard just to block the entrance. The pro nukes they're ventilated, so you can just throw them on a truck, you can block them, and just move them so easy. Now, what we're running into here today, I think it was 84 degrees, so they are still okay in the pro nukes, but it's almost about to be too hot, so they'll kind of cook in there if they're in the sun. But man, I've never really used pro nukes significantly before this year, but I just really, it's just so, I like the space too, because you can get a feeder, a 1 gallon feeder and 4 frames in the pro nuke. Whereas the regular 5 frame boxes, you can only get 3 frames in there with the feeder. So, but that works really well. I do think actually I like to move them if they're in nukes, if splits, just because of that very reason, Greg. The 10 frame splits, it's easier with 10 frame splits just to drop them in the same yard, because you don't have to try to block them, put them on a truck and move them. So you can block, I have done that before, but it's just harder with the 10 frame splits. Now, if you got all the equipment, had it ready available with the skid steer, the pallets, you can just take, I know of commercial guys. I think Tyler Walker does this. I know Matthew Walker, we got on here one night, Matt Walker. He actually, when they get these bees back from almonds, or when they have all their hives built up in the strong double deeps, what they do, a lot of the big commercial guys, is they just and they'll just drop they'll take the top box off. They'll make sure sometimes they don't even check. They'll check a few and make sure there's brood in the top. And they literally just take the top box off. They set pallets like parallel to the pallets they already have, the double deeps. they'll take the top boxes off and put them over on the pallets next door. And then they just yank those pallets up and move them. Don't even look for the queen or anything. Take them and move them to a new location. Once again, keeping the foragers, they'll put them on the truck the way they do, with the pallet, with the skid steer and everything. Move them to a new bee yard, and they'll drop queen cells and everything. What that does is if it's a queen cell goes in a hive that has a queen that's healthy, good, and strong, chances are, if the queen's old and weak, that new virgin will come out and they'll have a battle, and the virgin may win and get mated and have a young queen in that hive. I think I've heard, I don't know if this is true or not, but I've heard that virgin queens are kind of like assassins. They go and they just take care of business. But I imagine there are some pretty intense battles. And then, of course, the queenless ones, that new cell theoretically will emerge and get mated. And so you can have a lot of really nice new queens that way and requeen everything, or make sure you have good, strong queens. And but that's difficult to do if you don't have all the equipment to do it. If you're just trying to pick up hives and move them here or there, my experience has been that's how I used to do it some, but it's just hard for me to move 10 frame boxes because I've got access to a skid steer, I've got access to equipment I need, but I don't have enough to, I have to recruit my brother to help me with his equipment. He's got better equipment for that than I do. And it's just, I've seen it work the way it is. Some, obviously the ones that you set in a different part of the bee yard are weaker because the foragers fly home. But with a good queen, they'll catch up pretty quick. And sometimes, actually, Greg, it's not a bad thing if you do move the queen away. Sometimes those older queens don't really catch up very well. You need to replace her. The good, strong young queens, if you move them away, they don't even slow down. But the older ones, if they lose that field force, sometimes they kind of struggle to catch back up. And so sometimes you might identify a weaker queen easier that way. That's kind of what I saw happening in the Athens Farms bee yard, Greg, where we did it that way.
Right. Yep.
Some of those old queens just haven't bounced back very well. And so I've been able to kind of identify some of those, and I may try to fix that. But man, it's just so many ways to do it, and they're all kind of a variation of the same thing. But I like what you said there. I do prefer this year. It's the first year I've really done the NUCS this way, where I had the pro NUCS. I could put the bees in there with a feeder and do it the way I did it with the kind of, we talked about it before we did it when you were here, and you kind of walked me through, we kind of talked about it, and it was kind of, I kind of had a plan and we talked about it. I'm not sure who actually came up with the idea of how to do it exactly, but what we came up with really worked well with a frame of food on the outside, 2 frames of brood in the middle, an empty frame foundation next to the feeder, and close them up and go. And man, it was like the perfect amount of bees. They grew quickly. I was able to sell them in about 3 weeks, I think. And they were already drawing out because I fed them, they were drawing out that, even though we didn't have a flow going there, really, I fed them, and they were drawing out the empty frames. And then, once they really had good population in it, and that the frame that was next to the feeder was starting to draw out. Usually they'll draw it on that side towards the bees first. They weren't really touching the one by the feeder very much. So I flipped that thing around and then took the feeder out and put another frame in there. And then within a week or so, they were drawing that one out, both of those out. And so then they were ready to sell. And the people who have bought them from me, as far as I know, are really pleased with them so far.
Yeah.
And so, it was pretty cool. And then I basically did the same thing with the queen cells. Almost 4 weeks ago now, 3.5 to 4 weeks ago. And they're looking as strong, but of course we're in a flow now, but man, they are just, Brian, can you pull up? I think I don't know if I sent you.
I got them.
A picture of the actual queens that I looked at yesterday too. I did send you some stuff from today though. I'm going to shoot you real quick. I'm going to shoot you. That is last night after I got done in Midland City. If you guys can see that. That's the bee yard there. It's just a beautiful evening. I went out there. I didn't wear gloves. I did have my bee jacket on. I didn't wear gloves, didn't use smoke. I went through those NUCS and found those queens. They were so gentle. It was it was so amazing how gentle they were. I just love it when at this time of the year. I want to find, let's see here.
What's this one here?
This is today. That is out at Honey Hill Farm. I was telling you early in the thing that is the first honey super. There's your boxes below, Greg, but that is the first honey super one. That was the strongest one out there, but there were 2 or 3 of them that looked like that, and then a couple weren't quite as strong, but so I added 2 more honey supers on top of that box. You can go on to the next one, Brian.
Jesus.
And that was in Slocum. That was Saturday. I stacked them up. That's pretty amazing. And now they're not all, I mean, it's probably a little bit overkill there, but the nectar that was coming out, I think they'll start filling those up. And I'm just trying to get boxes on Hives right now, and they're going to fill those up. And
what's this one here?
This, yeah, start that thing. That is to show you how strong these hives were at Honey Hill today. That is the bottom box of a double deep. That's the one I showed you that just had the honey in it. That's what was the top deep on that box. And then below that, I don't know if you can see or not, but there was the honey super. But look at how many bees there are. Look how calm they were. And these bees typically out at Honey Hill are sometimes they can be a little bit feisty, but look at all those dang bees, man. It's just like heaven.
Wow.
Pretty awesome. And then, Brian, I just sent you a couple. I'm not sure if you got them uploaded or not, but this one right here is yesterday. This is one of the new NUCS, one of the new queens I made from cells. Look at how calm these bees are. I mean, they are just, they didn't care if I was there or not. They just were perfectly happy. And you see, that was one I made. That was one that had the 4 frames. It had a feeder, and I was taking the feeders out and putting a new frame in there. But look at that brood pattern. Look at how calm the bees are. That is exactly what I'm looking for in my bees. That's what I want to see. I'm just done with mean bees. I can't stand mean bees, and it's so nice to have bees that are more calm now. There's one more, Brian, I think.
When are you going to list these out on your website and sell them?
I don't know if I'm going to sell these. I might keep these.
Because you could just label them. These would be bodacious nukes.
But you can see how strong that nuke was. And then here's the last one right here.
Jeez,
I think this is the last one. Is this the last one, Brian?
Yeah.
I don't know. Does it have the queen on it? That's maybe not the one I was trying to do. Hold on. I think I sent you the wrong one. Let's see. I wanted to show you real quick the one of the new queens. Let's just do this one right here. These once again were cells from about 3.5 weeks ago. And man, they're just beautiful. I got these cells from Tyler Walker. He has a couple of H2A workers right now I think they're from Nicaragua, maybe. Look at that queen.
There we go.
And she is just laying it up. That was actually the queen, I think, that I just showed you the brood. That's how many brood she's laying. But she's well mated. She's calm. She's just having a great time, just doing her thing. And the bees are just, anyway, it's like heaven. And so I had that bee yard. I think I had 9 or 10 that were just like that, just beautiful queens. Some of them were a little more tiger striped than that. She's a blonde queen, but this is what I love. This is the time of the season, and I'm maybe just starting to figure out this nuke thing and the splits to where I'm getting it honed in a little bit better than the past. And I literally could go in and just make 30 more splits this weekend probably, and end up April right now is the time to do it. In about 2 or 3 weeks, it's almost like there's too much nectar coming in. When the tallow hits, it's almost too much nectar, and you can get in trouble. Plus, it's getting a little bit later in the season down here. I know you guys are just kicking it off up there, but down here, it's prime time right now. It's just incredible. So,
wow.
Anyway, I do think too, Greg, sometimes if you want to make nukes later and you don't want to really harm or hurt your honey production, you don't have to take a complete split out of a hive. I talked to last night at Barrett Lisa's at the bee club they have up there at the Butcher's Daughter up there in Ozark. We had a nice crowd last night. And we talked about splits, but you can mix and match bees. Like if you want to just take one frame of brood from your colonies and you can make splits up that way. Take a frame of brood from a frame of food from a colony, maybe a frame of brood, and then go to the next colony, take a frame of brood, and you can make up your splits that way. And you don't make sure you don't have the queen. You can mix those bees up and not feel like you're really pulling a lot of resources from your colonies that way. When you pull a full split out of a colony, you're taking quite a few resources if it's a good strong nuke. But you can make really strong nukes and just take like one frame out of each colony, and the hive doesn't even skip a beat. Would you agree with that?
Well, especially if you need to just humble them a little bit. There's a fine line until you figure. There's so many things you don't know, like how hard is the flow going to hit? How long is it going to stay?
Mm-hmm.
Are we going to have any weather that's going to interrupt it? So sometimes you're looking at there's a fine line with a colony that is ready to swarm, and then the line is they are peak population for the honey flow. And so there's this line right in between that you try to ride the whole entire time. And so if you need to go in and actually thin them down and pull them back a little bit, you know, you can certainly, if you like, think about this, if you have a flow coming, if you have a flow that just started and it's going to last for 1 week, how beneficial is it to have 3 or 4 frames of brood inside of a colony taking up space? If your focus is on honey during that 1 week period, or even 2 week period, my thoughts are it's zero beneficial. If that is a honey production colony and flow is hot and heavy, getting ready to kick in, and it's only going to be there for a week, and you have X% of your colony tied up in cap brood frames, what I like to do is at that point go in and pull that cap brood out of there, make the splits, equalize some colonies that are going to be too small for honey production but need a little population boost, get those frames out of there, and get some drawn comb on those colonies who have the field force, who are already the right age to go gather and bring things in. Get the frames on those colonies so they can go out and get it and bring it back, because that brood is not going to help you at all. Zero help for that flow. It's only going to be in that window of time. Now, if your flow is 2 months long, then of course when the brood hatches, you know, and then in another 2-3 weeks they're old enough to start to do some of that work. Okay, that's a different story, but that's not how our flows typically work here. You know, they're in a 7 to 10 day time frame, and there's maybe some gentle overlap. But if you know, you like, if when blackberry comes on here, or if black locust comes in, I really don't want my colonies, the real estate inside of it, to be taken up with capped brood. I want that brood. I want to remove some of that brood, because what you don't want to also happen, and you have to look at almost 2 to 3 weeks before peak flow, is you don't want a colony who's getting ready to swarm right at the precipice of a heavy flow, because they will hit the trees as soon as that flow comes in, and then you've got nothing. Now the swarm is in the trees. The box is now in rebuild mode, and yeah, they'll bring in some of that honey, but it's not going to amount to anything. But if you get there just ahead of the flow and you thin them down right as they're thinking about starting to put on queen cells, and you pull them back and you pull that brood out and you make some splits, or you start to equalize or balance out some of those smaller colonies trying to come back up and build through the wintertime, and then you put the drawn comb on those colonies, that is a winning combination. That is a fine dance, a fine line. If you're trying to grow your operation and make honey from the same colonies, and you're trying to make all these moves at the same time, hey, if you can figure that out, great. But I can tell you that a dual purpose anything is poor. You take a dual purpose chicken, they are not a great meat carcass, and they are not a great egg layer. You take a dual purpose, like a speckled Sussex, for instance, beautiful birds, but they're not really a reliable egg layer, and they don't make a very great meat carcass. You take something like a Cooney pig, or you take something like a Dexter cattle, for instance, right? You try to milk it and try to get beef off the same. They just don't excel at anything individually, and so there's this compromise, and it's like, what are we doing here? The bees are the same way. If you know that, hey, I need to grow, and I need to grow in a certain percentage, then cool. Think about going to the production colonies that are going to be in the trees, and you're going to lose them, and pull those back and use that for your splits. You're killing two birds with one stone. But it's an important thing. I don't think folks spend enough time, at least beginners, that aren't able to. You're thinking about all those other things. Eventually you get to the point where you start to understand the delegation of duty inside of the colony and realize how important it is to be balanced. And I like, that's when you had mentioned that earlier, Bruce. When we are making these splits in the same bee yard and we're moving the brood away from the parent colony, any foragers that are going to be on there are going to go back to the mother colony in the same yard. And so now you have a split that is just brood, young bees who, for the most part, aren't going to be out getting the groceries. Whether it's a queen cell or a mated queen, it's going to go through that entire process till they get rebalanced in age and then delegation of duty. But what you'll find is the splits where you're just moving the brood over, it might look like they're a little bit behind. They're going to have a 2 to 3 week time period where you see bee bodies, but you don't see a lot going on inside of the colony as far as growth. They're not able to yet. But as soon as that brood that hatches becomes a little bit older and they are bringing the groceries in, then they start to catch up. Whereas in the situation where, in that same scenario where if this is the parent colony and you pull the brood out and the brood's here, the foragers go back, the brood here, this colony slowly grows back up, and it takes a while. But this colony here that just lost all of its brood, they still have all the field force. They're just going to keep cruising. And if anything, those are going to be the honey producers if it at the right time, because now for the amount of frames you've pulled out in brood, you're putting drawn comb or fresh frames into the mother colony that they're working on filling back up again. What's important to think about is whether you move the brood to the new spot, or if you do it the other way and you move the queen, the mother of the colony, to a new spot. When you do that, then the field force goes back to the brood colony, the queenless colony. And when that happens, if it's done at the wrong time of year, they can be a little bit grumpy and not real accepting of a queen. But if there is a flow on,
yeah, they don't care.
Even if your overall percentages are a little bit lower because you have older queens, what you'll find is the delegation of duty is more balanced, and you actually see them just let it rip. And they are way more productive, and they grow so fast that by the time you look at both ways that you did it, they eventually start to catch up. But early on, the colony that is just the brood in the original location because mama went away, that field force that does trickle back, as long as it's on a flow, I actually prefer to do it that way, because now I know my queen is out of the way. She's over here. She's got time to build up, and she's not going to swarm again. The swarm is completely quelled on her. Now this one, it's just a matter of maybe it's a 5% or a 10% less in acceptance, but they've got the field force to do the work and move things forward. So either one of them works, but you have to know what's going on there. If you're getting ready to split on a lean time where there's not a lot of things coming in, it's going to be even more challenging. And that's where feed is so important, whether it's by you and bucket feeders or incoming food is so super important. But you know, all splits are not created equal. You've got to understand the field force, the delegation of duty, and what your goal is. Are you trying to increase? Are you trying to just stop a swarm? Or are you trying to maximize the colony for honey production? And when you can figure out which 3 of those things are you doing or combinations, then I think you can select the right style of split. And then the last split that you talked about that works really well, which is not a tool for a lot of the beekeepers, I think, listening in tonight. The dirty split is probably one of my favorite. And you can only get to that point when you don't care about the queen that's in the box anymore. When you have more colonies and queens than you care for, and you're able to graft and make your own by the hundreds, then the 1 or 2 or 3-year-old queen in the box doesn't matter. They're not even your breeder queens. Your breeder queens are an isolated area. Let's say you've got 100 or 200 colonies and it's a 1 or 2-year-old queen. Think about this. Literally, like what you just said, going in double deeps, brood in both. You're literally just yanking off a top box, putting it on a new pallet or a dead out spot, cracking the lids, and then going through and putting queen cells and everything, just dirty, quick and dirty. And those work out beautifully. But the difference is it's like scarcity mindset versus abundance mindset. A lot of us are in that scarcity mindset where we got to keep every queen. We can't afford to lose the queen. What happens if I lose the queen? Right. And so you're making these moves and kind of overdoing every motion and every movement because you got to keep what's there. Eventually you get to the abundance mindset where you've got more colonies and more queens. You're in good shape. So now you can go through and crack lids and drop queen cells, and it doesn't matter what goes on. Like you mentioned there, if you have a failing queen, they're going to love the queen cell. She's going to take over. If you have some kind of a rock star queen in there and they're keeping her and they're not ready for her to be overthrown, she'll keep going. But most of the time you drop queen cells, that is the path forward. we talked about that a couple years ago. That's what we did when we had these outlandish, ridiculously aggressive VSH colonies in an outyard. I was so just absolutely disgusted with it. We cracked open the lids, dropped a queen cell in every single one of them that were our stock, and we totally just reversed that entire condition. So queen cells are very, very valuable, whether you're cutting them out on your own, whether you're bringing them in from somebody else. Very valuable tool, no matter your scale. But understanding your scale, your goals, I think helps you to kind of tune in to which split method and technique is best for you. We're getting to be already an hour and a half tonight, guys. So if you have a couple questions, leave them in all caps. We'll try to get through those tonight. I want to thank Mr. Mark Zenner. I think it sounds like he's on a flight somewhere, 30,000 feet, listening to the stream team when he could be snoozing or looking at the Delta in-flight menu for peanuts or pretzels. He's listening to the stream team. So he says, do what you need to get well. So Mark, really appreciate your support there, and thanks for thinking of us on that. Mr. Uncle Junior 67. Anybody? Brian? 67? Nobody? See, that's just obligatory now at this point. Okay. Coffee and a donut. Thank you, Uncle Junior 67, for your super chat. Really do appreciate that. Mr. Glade, Utah B man. I like to leave my for sale nukes sit for at least 3 weeks so that the age range balances back out. Yep, that's a great way to do it. Not all nukes are created equal. Not all splits are created equal. Not all queens are created equal. And it's amazing how much nuance and variation that there is with all these things.
There's an important thing of that too. I think now if you're putting all, I guess, a drawn comb in there, I guess it doesn't matter too much. But if you're trying to draw out foundation, those new nukes, it takes some time for them to do that. That's what I did. That's the reason I didn't sell mine. Population wise, I could have sold mine like in a couple of weeks because we moved them away. They had everything was just rocking and rolling with population and everything. But because I had the feeders in them, I wanted to start drawing that frame out. And because I also wanted that original foundation we put in there drawn out, I think it was 3 to 4 weeks before I actually sold those to customers. The cool thing is we could do it so early. You know, we did that on February 20th and 21st, I believe it was, Greg. And so it was so early that, man, by, you know, I was selling these nukes by mid-March and had some happy customers. And now, like, I talked to Dale last night, Dale Sharp. They're the guy, him and his wife are the ones that did the that bees in a box, Alabama bees in a box thing, bugs in a box. And he bought 3 of the nukes from me, and he said he's going to get honey off of them this year. And I don't think there's any doubt because I'm going to get honey off of some of the ones that I kept.
Yeah.
So it's so fun to be able to do it that early. The key is getting a bead on queens that early. That's the big issue down here is you got to have queen access. And I don't like to, you know, you can graft down here. You can get cells or you can maybe make queens, but you just don't know what the weather's going to do. You don't know if they're going to be really well fed. It's iffy whether or not there's enough drones that are mature enough to get mated well. And so if you can find, you can do it with cells, but if you can find mated queens that early, like I had, there's no reason. I mean, you saw how it was, how perfect it was. But I think key too, Greg, in that was that we fed all those nukes. And I actually put open feed out for the other splits. I didn't have feeders in there. No, we did. We put bucket feeders on them, didn't we? We put bucket feeders on all the new queens, wherever the new queens were. We put bucket feeders on them, and you know that might have been a difference too in Applin because I put the bucket feeders where the new queens were, and the queens that moved away, I just kind of put open feed out for them. I didn't put bucket feeders on them, and so they didn't get the food they needed, and that might have been why they were a little bit behind. Whereas in Slocum, we moved the split away, and I put the bucket feeder on the split. We moved away to a different pallet.
Right.
And so they were fed and the original colonies had food left in there. They still had food that was, you know, so they were that mind. I didn't think about that resource. We probably should have fed the queens that we pulled away too. Even that might have been the difference why they were a little slower going. I didn't think about that, but I did put some open feed out for them, but still, like you say, they lost their field force.
Yeah.
So they couldn't maybe get to that open feed. So that's something I may need to tweak next year. I need to get more lids from you. I need to get lids from you with holes in them.
Those make
My lids, I know you saw my lids with holes in them, and I have a limited supply of those because I don't want to drill holes on all my lids, and so.
Yep.
But the ones you have, you can easily put the plugs in them, and so you know.
Yeah, but look
I
at where
told,
you're at now. Now you're thinking about things in a different way, or you can see, oh, you can start to pull things together and then realize even something as simple as a bucket feeder, you know, how a lot of us have been, I mean, I've been preaching that for a long time. It's just, it becomes a no-brainer when it comes to requeening or making splits. It also in the situation where when you are moving the queen part of the colony to a different location and leaving the brood behind, that like if you put a bucket feeder on that colony there, your take rate will also increase because even the grumpy field force bees that are in that box,
happy.
they're happy because there's food going on. And when
That's
there's
right.
food coming in, I mean, it's like anywhere. When food's coming in, and there isn't, and you've got that food security, I mean, that is huge. So
Well,
that's a
last
neat
night,
thing.
you know, we've talked about this maybe before, but last night I think I mentioned at the bee meeting, bees are programmed to work. They're programmed to be working all the time, and if they're not working, they get grumpy. Even if they have plenty of food in the hive, you know, they have that honey stored up, and they technically have food. They may have been collecting pollen. They may have full frames of pollen, full frames of honey, plenty of food. But if they don't have anything to go do, if they're just hanging out in the
Oh,
hive,
yeah.
they are just going to be grumpy. They just don't want
Yep.
to be hanging out in the hive. And so they want to be out being busy. The bees in the hive want to be processing baby bees. They want to be moving food around. They want to be feeding baby bees. They want to be doing something besides
Right.
just hanging out with nothing to do.
Yep.
And I think when those foragers go out, and of course we're anthropomorphizing, or however you say that word,
Good
a little
job,
bit
Bruce.
here, but the bees, they get bored, and when they you can imagine it's kind of like they go out, and once again I'm putting human characteristics on them, but if they fly around all day, if it's here in Alabama, if it's a 70-degree day in January and there's nothing blooming anywhere, and they can't find anything, you know, they fly all day. You can imagine they come back and they're just probably a little bit ticked off and a little bit grumpy, and just, you know, like, you know, it's just they want something to do and they want to be successful at that goal. And so it's that's one thing, like you mentioned with queen cell acceptance, I do believe they do better
Yeah.
if the foragers are not, if everybody's happy, they just do better, period. But I had a tremendous acceptance rate just regardless of the situation, the status, any errors we may have made. I mean, I was probably at worst 85%. I think I was more like 90% on everything,
Yep.
including the mated queens and the cells. And
Yep.
I think I know that one of the Kona queens, and I had 8 Kona queens that a friend had too many, and so he sold me. They were carniolans, and I think one of them probably requeened. I think they all got released and were accepted, but I think one of those may have requeened already. And then, but very few of Zach's queens had issues, and very few of the cell. I mean, they're just, you know, right now, a few weeks in, they're doing great. And I've mentioned I've got another location where I'm actually taking care of bees for a fellow. It's a new location. Greg, you know the situation. Brian, you know about it as well. But it's a guy that has a really beautiful piece of property up north of here. He actually is hiring me to take care of 16 colonies for him.
Mhm.
And I put 16 of those nukes went up there to get those hives started off, and they are just doing so good. They're just beautiful. They're growing up into they filled up the bottom box now. I put a second box on them already. And I told him not to really count on honey this year. But when I put the second box on this past Friday, I put a feeder in the top box. I took the bucket feeders off and I put a in frame feeder in there, the ones you got to me.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess those are 1.5 gallons, Greg. I'm not sure. They
Right.
were the bigger mother load. I'm not sure how big they are,
Gallon and a half.
but
Yep.
I pulled 8 frames up into that top box. I pulled 2 frames of brood from the bottom box up there to get them started, and just fed them. Even though there's a flow starting to come in up there, I think that'll help them draw it out even quicker. But those bees are exploding. It's just crazy how cool that is. But maybe we'll get a little honey off of those, but those early splits like that, when you do splits in late February, I mean, you have a good chance of making a honey crop down here, because it's just so early. And I know you guys' honey season is a little later than us, and so I don't know if it translates to splits in April. You know, you can get a honey crop like in June or July. up there. I'm not sure if that works. I don't know how it works for you guys. I guess
We're
it depends
so-
on how strong
we're
the
so
splits
tight, aren't
are
we,
too.
Brian? We're so tight on time. I think you have to you have to choose what you're doing.
I usually
Greg.
here last week of June, first week of July. So things by that point, they're pretty much wrapped up. And then we have like a little bit of a trickle flow that's coming in. It's not enough where they're going to like fill out any more supers at that point, but pretty much that initial like flow for the season, it's done by that point. So that's why I'm doing 2 different methods for my splits here this spring. It'll be the first time that I ever do different methods, but it's, well, I want to boost numbers just by 2, and then I want to boost honey crop. So it's just, you have to kind of look at what you need and then decide, well, what plan fits for you.
Yep.
Hey, Brian, can you put Eric's comment up there?
Yeah.
But yeah, I was going to say, what was I going to say? Does Bruce have more hours in the day than the rest of us have? Eric,
He
I'm going
actually
to tell you
does.
this. And Lisa
Actually
Lisa said down there, no, Eric, he has an angel of a wife that deals with his busyness. And that is 100% true. My wife is just the most incredible lady, and she puts up with me. But I have the same amount of hours. But like just today, for example, I went to work. I work a 10-hour day, got up earlier so I could leave from work a little bit earlier. And before the stream team, the reason I was a little bit late was because I was out just checking on those bees. So I probably put in 60 to 70 hours a week this time of the year. It's just, I'm exhausted all the time, but I love it. And I'm getting up like usually around between 5 and 5:30. And I don't usually get to bed till about 10 or 10:30. And Greg, you guys both know how it is. Greg, especially, I think you're probably on that same time schedule. But I don't have more time. I still have the same number of hours in a day. And some days I just wonder, is it worth it? But like last night, I was over there in Midland City, and the sun was going down. I had that picture I showed earlier where the sunset's going over the hives, and I just checked on those bees. And right now, we have the situation going on where the bees are super happy. They're bringing in resources, and you can smell. I don't know if it's a pheromone.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if it's the honey. It may be a combination, but there's this sweet, sweet smell that almost gives you chill bumps. It's almost like the feeling you get like if you smell like a I don't know what it is, but something that smells like it just refreshes and cleanses your sinuses a little bit. But it's not as strong. It's not like a Vicks. It's not that kind of smell, but it's just a sweet smell. But you just breathe it in really deep, and it literally gives you almost like a high. It just is such a neat feeling and smell out there that you can't understand watching a video. But I just love it, and I just do what it takes to try to do everything. And I do have my regular job. I have a family, and I have a lot of church responsibilities. But I just stay busy. I do. My wife and I usually crash in the evenings, and we may watch a show or just kind of hang out and talk and visit a little bit. But we're both busy. She has a lot to do as well, so we both just stay busy. And that's just I don't do well. I'm kind of like a bee in the sense that, yeah, I can sit and rest for a little while, but if I'm not doing something, I feel
someone catch me up.
Yeah. I'll tell you now. He sent me a video today of his. It was a classic picture. Oh, I got to send this to you, Brian. It's a classic picture of Brian Lee, his bee yard with his truck behind his hives. But guess what kind of truck he has? He's like the coolest beekeeper on the planet. Brian Lee is. I'm gonna see if I can get this picture uploaded for you. Brian Lee has. I got to do it. For those who don't know, I said I'm gonna send you 2 pictures here because Brian Lee he's like the coolest dude on the planet, man. In my opinion, he's one of the coolest guys. Besides you guys, of course. I think you guys are there too. Pretty cool. But
I think I want to be. I either want to be Larry Sears or Brian Lee when I grew up. I'm not sure which one. Either one.
Right. So Brian, I'm sending you these 2 pictures so you can. So here's Brian Lee today. He sent me these pictures they're just the classic Brian Lee pictures. Got them. Anyway, I'm not sure where I was, but I was just saying I'm super busy, but I love it. And if I do get rest, it's good for me. But after a day or two, I've got to be going again. If I'm going on vacation somewhere, I love to visit with family and love to hang out and love to rest. But there comes a point where my mind just starts thinking about everything I need to do back home, and it's hard to rest. But anyway, Brian, show us what you got there. This is like, there may be other people that are in this situation, but this is Brian. That's his truck right there. He's got him a cyber truck back behind the beehives, and that's a good looking bee yard right there. There's not too many beekeepers that have that situation going on. But Brian has moved. I don't know. He was retired, then he wasn't, and he may be retired again. I'm not sure, but he is down in Tallahassee now. And there he is right there. That's just the coolest dude on the planet right there, old Brian Lee.
Yeah.
I got to say, Brian is
Great
a great
guy.
friend. He is a good dude, a great
Yep,
friend. And he's never
absolutely.
met a stranger. If you ever met Brian Lee, you know, he's just a great guy, and he is just a really good, loyal friend. And I'm glad. That's just an example right there of what the beekeeping community has done for me. I love the bees, but I also love this community. And it's you guys, it's Brian Lee, it's Lisa on here. I see Mike and or Travis from Easy Ox on here. Sup, John Law. I mean, so many people. It's just, I would have never, ever had this type of experience with the community that I have with beekeeping had I not been a beekeeper, obviously. And so I'm just so grateful. Yes, I'm grateful for the bees, but I'm grateful probably equally as much for the community that I've been able to come in contact with through this thing. It's been incredible. But
Bruce,
guys,
thanks for your super chat. $19 or $20. Hashtag Streamteam. Hashtag beethelighthouse. Hashtag spring splits.
Hey, look at that
hashtag
picture
Bruce with bodacious bees and such.
From Easy Ox right there, a smelling yard. You know, I wonder if there's a way you could capture that smell in a bottle or somehow, and then just sell like you could, like you can treat your nose like by shoot up your nose, and man, because there's
something to it, Bruce, because there are those kind of walk-in scenarios where you put a mask on and you're breathing in the essence of a colony. There is something therapeutic to it. You might not have any more hours in the day, but what's interesting is you have more days of the year where it's beekeeping days per year. Now that could be good or bad, but we get so few of those. It's like we try to condense everything into a much shorter window, have the same experiences, have a positive outcome, and it's sometimes I wonder what I'm doing up here, up north, raising bees when I could be down south somewhere. There's much bigger risk. There's a lot. It's not just as easy as that. It's not just rainbows and sunshine, and it has its own challenges. But it seems like there are extreme limitations when your season starts late, it ends early, and then it throttles so quick. There's no, Bruce has this dance where it's like it goes like this, and then it goes up. For ours, it's like, and so there's a lot less buffer to get things done, to get things in and out. But regardless, that smell, that sound, the way they feel, those days where you can just breathe in the essence of the hive, when you can feel the fanning of their wings on your hands or on your face, the heat that you can feel off of them, and just the overall, just the vibrancy and the miraculous nature, when you can just fully experience that, there is nothing on earth quite like it. And if you could bottle that, if you could put that in something to where those days where you're exhausted or you're down or you're just feel beat up or you feel like you are losing, if you could just get you a shot of that in your coffee or whatever that it would take, wouldn't that be nice? But in the meantime, we'll have to live vicariously through Bruce's YouTube channel.
Maybe there's something maybe that's something we could figure out and patent that thing and just have like, a little, I don't know. Anyway, but yeah, it is really cool. And I'm sure it's a little bit different everywhere you are, depending on what they're bringing in, but it's not just the honey. People say I smell honey, but it probably is that, but there's something to it. I think it's gotta be a pheromone. It's not the lemongrass oil pheromone, but there's something about it that's very refreshing.
There's there's a warm, buttery, yeasty, cakeish kind of a thing that it's just
it smells good, but literally it's like it's almost like
calming.
It's calming. Yeah. It's like a drug, honestly. You just feel that refreshment. So we were out there. I've got my son-in-law's friend was down visiting from Canada. He might still be here. He might have flown out, but he was down here visiting, and he had never been in bees before. There's going to be a video coming out, kind of a shorter video. He came out with me Friday afternoon. He and Rylan came out with me, and that was just starting for really the last couple of weeks. I started to smell that, just kind of have that vibe with the bees a little bit more. The privet's just kicking in. Things are starting to really kick in now with a decent little flow. And I was just out there and I caught that whiff of that. I wasn't in a hive or anything. I was just kind of walking around. Like I said, Bryn, I said, come stand right here and see if you smell that. And maybe there was a little breeze or something. By the time he got there, it wasn't there anymore. And then a little bit later, I was like, oh, I smell it. And he's like, ooh, that is, it's just something, even walking around in the bee yard, you can smell it when they're really, and during a super strong flow, when everything's going on, like when Tala's around here, when it's coming in really strong, especially if it's not real windy, you can just stand in the middle of your hives and you just have that incredible sense of smell. But right now it's coming in, but boy, when you open those hives up and they're real happy, you can tell this time of year, you can tell by how the hive smells if it's healthy or not. Have you noticed that, Greg? Like if it's an unhealthy colony, it doesn't smell as good. The bees are usually cranky, and there's a whole different smell. Yeah, it's not the bananas, it's not the angry thing. It's just it doesn't smell the same. So it's weird how we're talking about this, and people cannot understand unless they've
once you've been, you can't explain it until you've been in the colonies, and you've experienced that. And a lot of times it actually takes a lot of time to be able to get to the point to where you have healthy colonies that are big and beautiful and robust and doing all the things. Sometimes it takes you a year or 2 or 3 to get to that point where you get enough of those colonies to be able to experience that. But then once you have that experience, there's nothing else on earth like it. And it's its own form of addiction's not quite the right word, but it's such a beautiful experience that you just can't help wanting more of it or have that experience again. I think one of the great things is that video that we did, Bugs in the Box, and I think Tennessee Tim McCandless, there's just something about the smell of a healthy hive is what he said, and in the interview that I did with him, Beekeeping Saved My Life, that was his prayer, feeling like he was on death's doorstep. Lord, just give me one more day. And he said it was that smell of a healthy hive that kept him going. Even in the darkest of times, there was something about the smell of a healthy hive that just kept him wanting to move forward. I don't think we have to try to explain it or put the words to it, but there is just something beautifully, miraculously divine and healing about these little bugs in a box.
That's right.
I want to thank Miss Lisa. Thank you for your $10 super chat. We love you guys too. Really do appreciate you. Maro Broski 2286. Thank you for the sticker, the super chat. We really do appreciate that. A couple quick questions here before we get off for the night. Kevin, Bees in the Abyss. What is anyone's thoughts on under supering versus just throwing on another box on top? Just real quick around the horn. Brian, do you over super or do you under super or do you super at all?
I'll under super.
Under super?
Yeah.
Bruce?
I do a little bit of both, but 90% over super. I think I've had success both ways.
Yep. I think if I have the choice, I like to do under super, just so when I can go through, I can just clear the top boxes off of everything all in one shot. And then when we pull that top box off, we can look into the bottom box below. And if it's ready, it goes too. If it's not ready, it sits there and the bees still have room to kind of come up into. So both of them work. And maybe it depends on the ferocity of the flow. Like how intense it is might dictate which way you kind of go about there. Mr. J.W. Irwin, I believe, under the handle Soapstone Apiaries. Greg, my hives are busting out, and I feel like they need split, but I have no queen cells out of 57 hives. Now what? JW, the last thing you need in the world to be doing is probably splitting 57 more hives into 57 more hives. Now, he's if anyone could do it, it'd be him. It's a great question though, because sometimes your colonies are so big, they're so thick, they're so fat and sassy. You're looking at them and you're thinking, I better split these before they swarm. But then if you actually get in there and look, if there's no swarm cells, maybe you don't. Maybe you need to give them more room or put them into a honey production mode. Give them something to do. Give them some new comb to draw. Get them some drawn comb to maybe store some nectar, some honey in. Put them to work. I think that's kind of an important thing to think about. But do they really need split? Split in 57 colonies that are just jamming and busting out? The problem is 57 can turn into 150 or 200 pretty quickly if they're really double deeps and really jamming. It's like, how far do you want to go? How much money do you want to throw at this kind of a thing? But boy, if they're doing that, and they're not putting on cells, the first thing I look for is drones. If they're fat and they're thick, but they're not putting, you don't see a lot of drone pockets or drone cells or drones between the boxes. You see that before you see swarm cells typically. So if you don't see the abundance of drones, you probably don't see the abundance of queen cells yet. And sometimes they can go through all this brooding and you get a cold snap and it almost resets some of the timeline and then they get going back again. But what do you do if they're busting out 57 colonies and no queen cells? I would say look and see if you have drones. If you've got a lot of drones, especially capped drones or drones between the boxes, they're probably thinking about making some cells here soon. The question becomes, how many colonies do you really want? And at 57, that's going to be hashtag JW240 before you know it.
Yeah, I guess if if you want to, you could just start adding space. If you want to, if you don't want to split them, just add space and hope for a good honey crop. I guess you could do that too.
I think those end up being some of the tower hive scenarios that we've seen. The big ones that just stack. Is there's a little weather event at some point happens, it kind of quells them wanting to jump, but then they just keep moving forward, and then next thing you know, you've got 4, 5, 8 boxes stacked up. Sometimes they just want to go to the moon, but knowing JW, I think he's being, as he would say, a little smart. I think that's what he's putting us on our toes here. Gru Dorg asked Greg, when will you have ENDURAHIVE deeps in stock? Thanks for the question on that. We do have stock of wax dipped equipment here in the shop. We have some of it on our website. If you don't see it on our website, that doesn't mean we don't have it in stock and can get it shipped out. If you need something and you don't see it available, the best thing to do is go to our website at naturesimagefarm.com, hit the About Us, and shoot us a message through the contact page, and we'll be sure to help you out or at least give you a timeline. Some of the product lines are so hot we can't keep them in stock, and we're doing everything we can to get things moving in and back out to folks. We're working on wrapping up the last round of the pre-orders for the Copper Dip Plus boxes. So those early spring orders, there's still quite a few of those that we're working on getting all those ready too. So we just want to say thanks again for everyone's support. You guys have really made this an exceptional year when it comes to ENDURAHIVE wax dipped equipment, when it comes to packages and NUCS. Right now, if you're interested, we've got one last round of packages available on April the 25th. Get your orders in ASAP. We're actually cutting those orders off here probably Thursday or Friday of this week, and that's it. From there, if you're looking for bees, we'd love to help. Our overwintered NUCS, we're sold out on those, but we have spring NUCS available. So check us out at naturesimagefarm.com. We'd love to help. We also will have mated queens available on April the 25th. So if you're looking for some mated queens, reach out to us, get those reserved ahead of time, and we'll make sure to have those ready for you on Saturday the 25th. Other than that, guys, moving forward the next week or so, we've got another package route to take care of. We're going to be getting all of our colonies kind of split out using the techniques that we've talked about tonight. We're going to be doing just those things. We're going to be moving probably on most of these, moving brood up over the excluders, letting the nurse bees come up into those boxes, and then we do something a little bit different. From that point in time, we make that vertical split. We'll pull the box up, pull the excluder, put a double screen board in, and let that split happen in that vertical space. What that lets me do is it lets me have my overwintered nuke for sale down below, and then my spring nuke on top. And now I can go at any point in time, pull out my overwintered nuke, get those to my customers, and then vertically consolidate the colony right back down to the spring nuke. When the spring nuke is ready for sale, the spring nuke goes off to our customer, and then we're left with a nuke of bees left for us back in the box. We drop a queen cell and we let it ride. That's kind of what we're trying to do to keep things moving forward. But that's because we're focused on nuke production. If it was honey production, that would be devastating. You would have zero honey flow. But you've got to know why it is that you need to make the split, what you're making the split for, like we've talked about, and then that dictates how you go about doing it. Brian, what's coming up for you this next coming week?
Oh, man. Well, once we get through this cold on, what will it be, Sunday?
Yep.
Tuesday, I know as soon as I get done with work, I'm going to go over and check my deeps. I'll just see how they look as far as the number of brood frames and see what signs I see. I will either be splitting on Tuesday or probably the Friday after that. So very soon here, I'll be taking my number of colonies up to 15, 16-ish in there. So yeah, it's going to get fun. So I've had a number of people saying also that they want to watch like the process. I'm editing a video right now about setting them up to where they are at right now. And then the very next video is going to be the splits. So I'll go through both of those methods. Like I'll go through my demarré process, talk about that, and then I'll talk about my traditional method that I would usually do. So that'll be coming up here very soon. So
awesome.
Fun.
Well, that's going to be exciting. All the different trees and things are going to be blooming, and that'll be one extra little kind of spectacle to see, along with all the bees brooding and doing all those things. So that's going to be one of the greatest times of the year for sure. Bruce, what are you getting into the next week?
I've I'm kind of at the point now to where I think what I need to do now is these newest nukes that I have. I need to do something with them. I need to get them in bigger boxes or sell them or something, or use them to replace, maybe drop them in some weak colonies out there. And so that's my number one item of business. This past weekend, I put on some extended oxalic acid, extended towels in my hives as I supered up. I was doing that out at Honey Hill today as well. So I got those in everything, and those are good for 90 days. So they should get me through the honey season. And so now it's just going to be a matter of getting the nukes all situated, getting them out into bigger space or getting them taken care of, and just managing. I'm also going to go in probably, if not this weekend, next weekend, and put queen excluders and everything. I like to let the bees work into the honey supers a little bit, get used to working those, and then come in, make sure the queen's down below the bottom level where I want the honey super to be, above the breed box, get the queen down below in the breed box, queen excluder, and then start managing supers. And it's really going to be a lot of, from here on out for the next month or two, managing honey supers and then harvesting honey. I may still pull some, I have access. Tyler Walker is down there. He is going to be having queen cells available, I think. A few here or there. I'll have to ask him first and see, but I might be able to get a hold of a few more queen cells and maybe just knock out a few little splits here and there, and maybe make some nice queens for my future use to be able to. I don't know if I need to make a lot of splits, but maybe just get some little mating nukes going and just kind of have some queens available for resources to be able to strengthen, replace queens that may be going weak on me, and maybe not have to depend on other people as much for mated queens the rest of the year. I do still think I want to get some from Zach moving forward in the wintertime or in the early spring. But man, these cells that, those queens, these are some of the really, really nice queens they seem to be that I did with these cells that Tyler produced. And so I'm pretty excited about having that resource right here. He's about, about 40 minutes away from here. But the Slocum bee yard is in the direction of his place. And so if I go down that way, then it's easy to grab some. I get my syrup and stuff from him as well. So it's pretty easy to grab those. So I'm excited about that opportunity. So I may break out a few splits here or there throughout the season, the next month or two, just to have some queens available and some extra bees to play with. Because as if I need extra bees to play with, right?
That's
what's going on. Video wise, I will probably continue to document a little bit. The next video that drops is going to be the one from this past weekend when I had Bryn from Canada down here, my son-in-law's friend that came down to visit for a couple of weeks, and his first experience in the bees. We were actually applying the oxalic acid extended release towels as well as honey supers, and so he came at a really good time to be able to see the bees pretty happy and to be able to experience some bee work as well. We got a lot of work done with him and Ryland as well. So he didn't just come and go in a hive or two and leave. We actually went through probably 40 colonies, maybe, give or take, with him here. So he was able to really get a good experience in the bees, and I think he really enjoyed it.
Awesome, guys. Next week, it's going to be the next month's going to be a little bit wild. But next week? Whose channel?
I think we'll get back in rotation with Brian next week, and then we'll kind of back in our typical rotation, if that's okay, Brian.
Yeah, fine by me.
Awesome.
Let's do it.
Well, guys, we really appreciate you tuning in tonight. There's been a lot of fantastic comments. So thanks for all your support. We really do appreciate you guys, whether you're tuning into the channels every week to like, to comment, to subscribe, whether you're checking us out on Facebook, on all of our efforts there, or if you're visiting our websites. We just want to say thank you so much for all of your support. It really does mean a lot. Until next time, we want to remind you to be the lighthouse and be who God wants you to be in this world. We'll see you next time. Thanks for watching. Hey, are you looking for honey processing equipment that's built to last a lifetime and actually built in the USA? Are you looking for the very best and wax-dipped equipment? Or maybe the beefiest wooden frames and foundation on the market? Check us out at nature'simagefarm.com and let's make Made in America great again.